Welcome to the Wicket.
Hello, and yes, it's time for your favourite dose of cricket chat at The Wicket, Arab News' very own cricketing podcast. I'm your host, Brian Murgatroyd, and with me, as ever, to discuss what's happening in the sport locally in the Gulf, regionally in Asia and worldwide, Arab News columnist Jon Pike and Arab News cricket reporter Subas Humagain. Hello, gentlemen.
Well, welcome back, Brian and Subas.
Welcome back, John. Hello, Brian.
And in this episode, we chat about the England-West Indies Test Series. We assess the Women's Asia Cup, which has wrapped up with Sri Lanka beating India to win the title. We reflect on the start of the India men's white ball tour of Sri Lanka and talk about key appointments made by both teams ahead of that tour. We look back at Ireland's men's stirring Test win against Zimbabwe. We round up T20 action from around the world. We look at the start of the 100 in England and Wales in what could be a key period for the future of the tournament. And on top of that, as ever, Subas and Jon tell us what's caught their attention in the world of cricket in the recent past. Time now, though, to get cracking with this episode. England have steamrolled the West Indies 3-0 in their Test series, regaining the Richards Botham Trophy as a result. England won the first Test at Lord's in just 2 days in a session as Gus Atkinson, on debut, took 12 wickets, including 7 for 45 in the first innings. The match was James Anderson's last before he retired from international cricket. England also gave a debut to Jamie Smith, preferred behind the stumps to Ben Foakes, and Smith made an assured and aggressive 70. By contrast to that first match, the West Indies were at times very much in the hunt in the second and third Tests at Trent Bridge and Edgbaston. But in that second Test, they fell apart in the final innings, and in the final encounter, having England 54 for 5 at one stage, having themselves scored 282, they couldn't ram home that advantage. Jon, you attended parts of the series. How do you assess the first half of England's Test summer? Player of the series, Gus Atkinson, with 22 wickets, and wicketkeeper Jamie Smith. Well, they seem to have taken to Test cricket like ducks to water, don't they?
Yes, they have. Atkinson's been warming the bench for a while, but certainly took his chance with both hands. Smith's had a particularly impressive start. We knew he could bat, but there was a doubt about the keeping, as he is second string to Ben Foakes, the rather excellent Ben Foakes at Surrey. But he did pretty well in the series, by my view, and about, I think, everybody else's. England will be happy with their 3-0. I think the West Indies were rather callow. They got themselves in good positions, as you say, and couldn't capitalise. And I think it's rather summed up by their non-review of Joe Root's LBW, which probably have cost them about 200 runs at Edgbaston.
Yes, that was a bit of a disaster for them in that third and final Test. Subas, the West Indies, they've shown promise in this series and they appear to have an effective bowling attack for Test cricket, but their batting is woefully inexperienced and it showed, didn't it?
Yes, that seems to be the case for Windies. I think it's been running for a long time as well. They've been trying out different individuals in between, but I think the biggest concern is big names opting for franchise cricket has hit the mud, and it's been a long time, even though I think it's taking time for them to recover. I think the contract dispute, I think that gave Kyle Mears a break and it looked like he'll be solving the problem. But once again, he's out of the scene. He's busy in franchise cricket. So I hope had shown some interest to return. But I think Windies are not looking back, but looking forward with new faces. And that's not working at all.
Yes, it certainly didn't work in this series in terms of the scoreline. Jon, for England, let's look at some big picture issues thrown up by the series. Is it fair to say they're tracking well for next year's Ashes off the back of this, especially from a bowling perspective? How do you assess things?
The coach said that progress has been made, but they're not the finished article, and I think that pretty well sums it up. They do appear to be focused on quick bowling for Australia. I mean, Wood bowled quickly, without much reward until the final innings, when he bowled at the stumps. He is 34, with 36 in Australia, so it's a big ask. I'd been more worried about the batting. It really is still gung-ho, and I think fodder for wily Australians.
Well, Subas, during the final test of the series, ECB Chief Executive Richard Gould said in a TV interview that England would be subsidising Zimbabwe to tour next year. Is the ECB's decision, I wonder, a sign that perhaps international cricket is waking up to the need to level the playing field financially for all teams to ensure they retain their best players in the face of franchise cricket?
Well, that's fantastic to hear. First bit, I think getting a tour to England itself is a great fixture. And if that comes with some financial incentives, I say other big teams should follow that suit too. If you don't have any teams ready to play the format, I think the format will not be relevant for in a long run. With this, Zimbabwe will get the fixtures and prepare themselves for other tours as well. And this will help teams like Afghanistan, Ireland to get some matches apart from the league of their own that's been going around for a long time now.
John, what was your reaction to Richard Gould's remarks?
Very favourable. I mean, there's much talk of richer nations having responsibility to the poorer teams, and Gould and the ECB is showing that. He's also on record as saying that India will show responsibility. I think might have to wait on that one, although they did go to Zimbabwe. I think I'd like to see more sharing of the riches, but at least the issue is being talked about in the open now.
Yes, that's very much a positive thing. International cricket, though, in England will now go into hibernation during what is traditionally the best weather of the summer and the school holidays, as the 100 is now given priority, and international cricket resumes in England and Wales in September when Sri Lanka tours. The Women's Asia Cup has taken place in Dambulla, Sri Lanka, and the home side has secured the title for the first time in front of a massive crowd, beating India by 8 wickets with 8 balls to spare in a thrilling final. India will have thought they'd got enough runs at halfway after scoring 165 for 6, as Smriti Mandhana made 60 from 47 balls. But with player of the series Chamari Atapattu responding with 61 from 43 deliveries, and then Harshita Samarara Wickrama and Kavisha Dilhari adding an unbroken 73 in only 6 overs and 4 balls, the hosts careered to a famous win. The tournament was an end in itself as 8 teams, that's Bangladesh, Malaysia, Nepal, Pakistan, Thailand and the UAE, as well as the finalists, fought it out to be named the region's top side in T20Is. But on top of that, it also served as vital preparation for the upcoming T20 World Cup in Bangladesh in October, a tournament India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan and Bangladesh are all taking part in. The teams were divided into 2 groups of 4, and India and Sri Lanka went through the group stage with 100% records, while Pakistan and Bangladesh also made it into the top 2 of their groups and therefore secured semi-final spots. Nepal and Thailand secured a win apiece, while for Malaysia and the UAE, it turned out to be a winless event. John, Sri Lanka's rise continues. Things certainly seem to be coming together for them nicely ahead of that World Cup, don't they?
Yes, it was an incredibly impressive result, put into perspective at a time when Sri Lanka's men's cricket is having another visit to the doldrums. The women's team, 2 impressive spinners, and with Atapattu gives them real spine. And the look on Dilhari's face when winning runs were scored was one of pure delight. I think a lot of credit also has to go to Rumesh Ratnayaka, who took over in February 2023, and he seems to have worked wonders with the players' mental approach.
Sebastian, this result will be a real shock for India after their significant progress over the past 12 months. What do you put it down to, I wonder? They cruised to the final. So was there perhaps an element of complacency, or is that not giving Sri Lanka the credit they deserve?
I think they took it a bit more lightly, but it's the right time to get a wake-up call. I think even at the halfway of Sri Lanka innings, it was India's tournament to win. They were on a good situation, but below par fielding effort was one of the main reasons they couldn't get the win. And also they took the game very easily with the body language of senior players, especially. I think you should be present to the game all the time. And with World Cup just around the corner, I think India will be wary about the situations.
Sebastian, how do you assess Nepal's campaign? Played 3, won 1, lost 2?
Well, I was more than happy with what I saw, Brian. The batting side performed better than I expected. We saw a similar team bundle out for 21 against India not so long ago. And there was involvement of former men's team skipper and now Nepali coach Gyanendra Malla in the preparation of the team. And him being batting consultant, I think the players were really helped. Even the players players agreed he helped them understand the situation better, how to play according to the situations. And the domestic cricket in Nepal is rising, the women's cricket is rising, and this was one example what a good leader will help. And I think it will only grow with time now.
John, how do you assess the also-rans in the tournament? Malaysia, Thailand, the UAE, and of course Nepal. Which side disappointed you most? And is the gap between the top sides in Asia and these other sides actually growing, do you think?
They're up against strong teams, several of whom do seem to be getting stronger. I think Thailand really disappointed me most. They seem to be falling backwards. They just simply can't score enough runs. They used to be the surprise team, but not anymore. So I think for me, Thailand's the one where been backward steps.
Yes, frustration for Thailand because, of course, let's remember they were actually taking part in the Women's T20 World Cup in Australia back in 2020. They seem a mile away from that now. Subas, what about the two losing semi-finalists, Pakistan and Bangladesh? Do you have any grounds for optimism ahead of the T20 World Cup for those two?
Well, Bangladesh are playing at home and they look to be a better team in their turf. The series against India last year showed it too. Pakistan, on the other hand, I think they're still looking for consistency. But if their batting line steps up, I think the bowling is good enough to get them all the way to the semi-finals and forward.
Well, that remains to be seen. The T20 World Cup gets underway in Bangladesh on October the 3rd and runs for 2.5 weeks. The opening day sees England play the losing finalists from the previous edition, South Africa, as well as the hosts, Bangladesh, facing one of the sides that came through the qualifying tournament, Scotland. Australia, the defending champions, and India get underway the following day. And a news line for you too. Chamari Atapattu has confirmed she'll keep playing for Sri Lanka at least until the 2025 Women's World Cup, putting to bed suggestions earlier this year that retirement was on the cards. That's great news for this Sri Lanka side that's very much on the rise. It's been a busy time in Indian men's cricket since we last spoke on this podcast. In that time, following the final of the T20 World Cup in Barbados, a shadow India side secured a 4-1 T20I series win in Zimbabwe. And now the full-strength side, after a break following that World Cup win, are back in action in Sri Lanka, playing 3 2020 internationals in Palakkale before the two sides play 3 one-day internationals in Colombo. The first 2 T20Is have already taken place and India have won them both. But without doubt, what's happened off the field ahead of the series for both teams has been of far greater significance. India have appointed Gautam Gambhir, their former opening bat, as head coach in place of Rahul Dravid, while Shubman Gill has been named ODI captain and Surya Kumar Yadav has slotted in as T20I captain, both of those appointments in place of Rohit Sharma. Sri Lanka, meanwhile, with Sanath Jayasuriya taking up the role of interim head coach in place of Chris Silverwood, who resigned after the T20 World Cup, have also had to name a new captain in the shortest international format, following the shock resignation of Wanindu Hasaranga. He's been replaced by Charith Asalanka. Let's deal with the changes around Indian cricket first. Jon, Gambhir beat off a challenge from another former India left-hander, Wakeri Raman, to secure the role of head coach. He looks to have an impressive pedigree with an excellent international career, followed by winning the recent IPL with Kolkata Knight Riders. He's a star on the rise in Indian cricket, isn't he?
It seems so. Clearly he's in tune with Jay Shah, although Gambhir does have the ability to polarise opinion. There could well be, maybe already, issues with Kohli and Sharma. It seems that Gambhir is firmly in the camp of promoting younger players, so I think we can expect changes ahead. The question is, will they be amicable or hostile?
Did it surprise you they didn't split the head coach's role? VVS Latchman filled in on that tour of Zimbabwe, but it's a tough gig for any coach to look after all formats these days, isn't it? Especially if you're with one of the leading sides.
Yes, it is tough, but it's not a surprise. I think he and Shaw, are a power base. The only question is, I think, will Shaw contest for the ICC chair or stay to consolidate India's power along with Gambhir?
Yes, that's coming up later this year, the decision on who takes over at the head of the ICC. Subas, let's talk about the captaincy appointments and the man who wasn't named as much as the two who were. Shubman Gill, well, he seems to be Test captain in waiting after the appointment to the ODI position. And Surya Kumar Yadav, he's someone guaranteed his place in the T20I side. So the logic of those appointments is very easy to understand. But what about the fact that neither role went to Hardik Pandya, who, of course, is captain of the Mumbai Indians? Should we be surprised?
Not at all, Brian. I think Gambhir does his things his way and is logical to it as well. Pandya has had bitter experiences with injuries and leading the team too. So I don't think he is quite the leader figure for the national team. Surya, he's a T20 specialist and has that leadership capacity. He is in there for a long run as well. Gill, on the other hand, I think he's looked as all-format captain for the future. So I think it's good to build him around, and there is competition in his spot. But if he continues to score runs, I think he's the captain in the making.
John, did it surprise you, the resignation of Wanindu Hasaranga as Sri Lanka's T20I captain? After all, despite a failed T20 World Cup campaign, he was only new to the job. There seemed no pressure on him to go too, especially after Chris Silverwood fell on his sword.
Yes, it was a surprise. But I think we should expect the unexpected of Hasaranga. Of course, the politics of Sri Lankan cricket also tend to be rather unfathomable. Maybe the change of coach could be the explanation.
Well, Subas Asalanka was captain of Jaffna Kings, which won the Lanka Premier League. More of that in a while. So was he the logical choice as captain alongside Jayasuriya, at least in the short term?
I think he was most suited after all, having got the experience of leading the side and maintaining the stability as well. He's within the squad for a long time, and the Sri Lankan squad scene is ever changing, and the leader needs to be mainstay of the team. So Asalanka indeed was a proper one.
Well, for both sides, it's clearly a case of needing to build for the T20 World Cup, which they're hosting jointly in 2026. For India, in those first two matches of their series in Sri Lanka, despite the absence of the now retired Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli and Ravindra Jadeja, the new look lineup barely missed a beat. There were runs for Shubman Gill, new captain Surya Kumar Yadav and Rishabh Pant, and Riag Paran even took 3 wickets in match 1, getting a chance to bowl, which he probably wouldn't have had if the super sub rule was in place. Ravi Bishnoi took 3 wickets in game 2, a match which was won by India when they chased an adjusted Duckworth-Lewis-Stearns score following rain, and that match also included a Sri Lanka collapse of 7 for 31 and 22 not out in just 9 balls from Hardik Pandya. John, India haven't missed those big names at all, have they? The future does seem to be very bright for them.
They haven't missed them so far. They've got so much talent to draw on. Really only politics and bias, I think, can derail them.
Well, the third and final T20I is taking place as we record this podcast, and the 3 one-day internationals start on Friday the 2nd of August and conclude on August the 7th. Ireland has hosted Zimbabwe in a one-off test match in Belfast, the first time test cricket has taken place in Northern Ireland, and the match produced a low-scoring thriller. The initiative swung one way and then the other in testing, but by no means impossible batting conditions, and although Ireland took a first innings lead of 40, they found Richard Ngarava, the tall left-arm fast bowler for the Africans, too hot to handle on the third evening as they set out in their pursuit of 150. He took 4 wickets in 4 overs to help reduce Ireland to 33 for 5 by the close of that third day. But then on day 4, Andy McBride with an unbeaten 55, Lorcan Tucker, who made 56, and Mark Adair, who's rapidly developing as an all-rounder with 24 not out, saw Ireland home by 4 wickets, and it was their second successive test win, following on from the victory over Afghanistan in Abu Dhabi in March. John, I just wonder, in your view, did Ireland win this test or did Zimbabwe lose it? Both sides had batting collapses, didn't they, when seemingly well set?
Well, as you mentioned, 33 for 5 overnight. I think few would have expected Ireland to win from that position, but they did with that superb batting from McBride, Tucker and Adair. They clearly had belief. Zimbabwe will rue their poor lower order batting as much as anything else. But I would say that Ireland won that game against the odds.
Yes, Sebash, what a performance it was by McBride, Tucker and Adair with the bat. Ireland, as we say, were in dire straits on that third evening. They were definitely helped by the close coming when it did, and then much better batting conditions on day 4. But all the same, superb stuff by that middle order, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think Tucker was the real hero for there. He didn't just stay and keep wickets, but relieve the team of scoreboard pressure as well. It's never too easy when you think of chasing the total straight away when the team is drilling 21 for 5. But Tucker, he just held on and counter-attacked the game as it got closer. They were tested to their best, but they passed the test with flying colours.
Yes, it was a terrific counter-attack by Lorcan and Tucker, that 56 in just 64 balls, and it really did wrest the initiative back towards Ireland in the run chase. But John, I guess a major question to come from this match has to be why it was played. Yes, it offered great entertainment, but it comes at a time when there's an increasing focus on the shorter formats, with neither side having the chance of challenging for the World Test Championship either. It does cost a lot of money to stage Test cricket, and there was no real context in a one-off match. What are your views on the rights and wrongs of playing this match?
Well, countries strive to acquire full member status, and with it comes the opportunity to play Test match cricket. Players still see it as the pinnacle of the game, although it looks like the percentage who take that view may be declining. If the countries with responsibility to play Test match cricket choose not to play, it's going to wither. I don't think the World Test Championship really relevant for those teams, but preserving tests and Test match cricket should be, and I think financial help also ought to be available. We touched upon that earlier. So I think that a world in which only T20 cricket is played doesn't really bear countenance.
Yes, all credit to the two teams for playing a test and playing a fantastic test too. And Sebash, I just wonder if this match is a perfect illustration of why, if Test cricket is to survive, there needs to be 2 divisions in the format. And if there is that something Nepal would be keen to play in your experience?
Well, there has been murmurs around, and I would be one to back the idea as well. The big teams, they're not playing the lower ranked teams anyway, and Test Championship with 2 divisions will surely add up the competitive edge into the format itself. For the top ones, it would be winning the match and surviving in the division if things doesn't go their way. And for the lower division, it would be to get the regular action, and if promoted, they can rub shoulders with the elites. I think it's win-win in my eyes.
Well, we know the top associate sides played the ICC Intercontinental Cup, a 4-day competition previously. It definitely helps teams, especially those without multi-day or first-class competitions in terms of player development, but it's expensive to run. Just wonder, is it time to go back to that as part of a 2-division setup? And how realistic is that to happen in this current environment? John, first of all, then Sebash.
Well, we know that Ravi Shastri flew the kite at the World Cricket Connects symposium, so I think it would be fair to assume the BCCI supports it, and maybe the ICC is not far behind. Has some merit. I mean, 3-day tests are not welcome, as we've just seen with the West Indies. But how do sides in the second division improve if they don't have the opportunity to play against the top sides? And thinking on, how would promotion and relegation look? 1 or 2 up and down? And is this something that really provides an opportunity to think about expanding the number of 4 members? Scotland are incredibly frustrated by not having that status and not really being considered for it at the moment.
Yeah, the big issue seems to be, particularly among the bigger teams, that they're happy with the idea of a Test Championship, 2 divisions, as long as they're not the ones who end up being relegated. Yeah, and
exactly.
Therein lies the rub. Sebash, what's your view?
I think it's the need of time now with franchise cricket coming up big. I think the finances in the international cricket should be fairly distributed. We know the big teams get most of it, but if you're not having international cricket, you'll have only big teams playing against each other, and that will lessen the competitive edge going forward. So if you're not investing into international cricket anymore, I think the franchise cricket will take over, and we might see professional cricket being on a whole new level.
Well, there have been and continue to be a host of T20 tournaments going on around the world. So let's round up what's been going on. The Lanka Premier League, that's the LPL, wrapped up on the 21st of July with, as we mentioned earlier, Jaffna Kings beating Gaul Marvels in the final, doing so easily in the end by 9 wickets with 4 overs and 2 balls in hand. South Africa batter Riley Rousseau plundered 106 not out from just 53 balls to make a mockery of chasing 185. The tournament, which featured 5 franchises from Gaul, Jaffna, Colombo, Kandy and Dambulla, saw no one side run away with things, and even Dambulla, which had ownership issues leading into the tournament and then lost its first 3 matches, came within 1 win of reaching the playoffs. The LPL also featured the Power Blast. That's a 2-over burst late in the innings in overs 16 and 17, in which only 4 fielders were allowed outside the fielding circle. Tim Seifert of New Zealand, playing for Gaul, was the tournament's top run scorer with 400 runs in 10 innings, while Shadab Khan, the Pakistan all-rounder who's been struggling for form in the past few months, well, he finished as the top wicket taker with 17. Subas, what were your chief takeaways from the tournament? It seemed to go pretty smoothly, particularly given the build-up around Dambulla, and so that, I guess, is good news in itself.
Well, the competitiveness within the tournament, as you mentioned, apart from that last fixture, I think there was no dead rubber. But with 5 teams participating, I think 4 teams making it to the playoff is a bit easy. Also, on the other hand, the Power Blast, I think another gimmick that doesn't look to have any use case going forward. And I really literally didn't find any use case of that in any matches.
John, with the USA's major cricket league and the 100 in the UK, which we'll talk about later, and Canada's global T20 tournament all taking place in this northern summer window, can the LPL retain its appeal or grow it, or would you expect it to shift back to the November-December window, which it has held previously?
It's got a problem. It's not attracting local supporters. Matches were played in very sparsely attended grounds. I mean, this may not matter if broadcasting viewer numbers are up. In Sri Lanka's case, I think it needs to gain attention from around the world, because it seems now that the MLC is in play and has attracted some of the big names who might have been attracted to the LPL. Also, we had India touring Sri Lanka, and also, of course, we had the Women's Asia Cup, which was well attended. So, the Sri Lankan economy is in bad shape. I think people are going to be very careful about how they spend their limited resources. And it looks like the LPL is suffering in that respect. It could be a time coming in the not too distant future when it's a bit of a shakeout on franchise cricket.
Well, we mentioned Major League Cricket there, and as we record this podcast, that tournament has just wrapped up with Washington Freedom beating the San Francisco Unicorns by 96 runs in the final. The Unicorns featured Australia Test and one-day international captain Pat Cummins, but Washington, captained by another Australian, Steve Smith, comfortably overcame them, with Smith making a dominant 88 from 52 balls in that final. Washington, San Francisco and Texas were well ahead of MI New York, Los Angeles Knight Riders and the Seattle Orcas. And the Orcas, who were runners-up in the inaugural edition in 2023, they finished bottom of the ladder this time with just 1 win. Subas, what have you made of this edition? Has it been an improvement on season 1? And I wonder, can you see any progress in the league?
Well, the World Cup certainly helped them get more attention within and out of the country. But can it sustain in the long term is the question. They played matches in North Carolina and Dallas, the latter getting more involvement of the fans. I was lucky enough to see first few matches myself, but franchise league will only flourish if you have your fans around. So can they expand it to other franchise cities that they have? Marketing new sports in the US is certainly not easy, and if they can stay afloat financially, I think getting back these quality players, it's going to be a big plus, and the 100 is going to clash with the tournament. I feel the quality players will have their dilemma on choosing which one to go.
Yeah, and one of the problems they have in the USA as well, of course, is the time zone, because if matches take place in the afternoon and evening, that's very much against the prime time viewership for the Indian subcontinent, which is always the market that these T20 franchise tournaments seem to aim towards. But as one T20 tournament wraps up in the USA, another one has started north of the border in Canada with the beginning of a new season of the country's global Global T20 tournament. That tournament, well, it features 6 franchises: the Toronto Nationals, Montreal Tigers, Bangla Tigers, Vancouver Knights, Brampton Wolves, and Surrey Jaguars. It's the 4th season of the Global T20. It started back in 2018 with Montreal winning a thrilling final against the Jaguars. That was 12 months ago in the last edition. And that was when Andre Russell hit a 6 off the final ball to secure success in that match. John, perhaps the biggest talking point happened before a ball was bowled for this league, as Pakistan denied Shaheen Shah Afridi, Babar Azam and Mohammad Rizwan no objection certificates to play in the tournament. What do you make of that decision, or where it could lead? We've been down this path before, haven't we?
Yes, we have. Officially, the PCB cited workload management for the players who are deemed as all-format players, emphasising the side's hectic international schedule coming up: 9 tests, 14 ODIs and 9 T20Is in the lead-up to Champions Trophy in February 2025. On the other hand, the 4 players have been granted NOCs, and I wonder if the PCB's new sort of iron fist style will actually cheer up people in Pakistan cricket circles who've been complaining about the behaviour of top players for some time. But you've mentioned, we've seen it before, Pakistan cricket looks like it could be the beginning of a rather stretched out drama. And to throw into that mix, there are rumours of skullduggery by one of the Indian franchise owners in Global T20 that might be related.
Yes, it's a tangled web indeed there. Subas, one of the major positives, though, for the event is the prominence that associate players have in it, alongside some big names like Australia's Usman Khawaja, Ashton Agar, and Colin Munro of New Zealand's there as well. Who are you most excited to see getting an opportunity on this stage, particularly from an associate perspective?
Well, to see more and more associate involved with the T2Is, I myself am watching all the matches of Vancouver and Toronto with Nepali boys involved. That is the UAE players that have impressed as well. Ayan Afzal Khan putting in match-winning performances, and this is how an associate league should be run. But then again, can the finance side of things keep up? That is the big question. But if you look at the cricketing side, I'm more than happy to see these boys, and especially the Canadian boys, step up as well.
Yeah, you mentioned the financial side, and can the global T20 survive in an increasingly cutthroat environment?
It's tough. If you look around, there are not as much sponsor as you'd see in other franchise league as well. So we know that the global T20 serves as part of the central contract for the Canadian players as well. So it's a big ask if you're not hosting these tournaments. The financial incentives that the Canadian players are going to get will be in a limbo. So it's part of their central contract. So you need to run it, but the quality of players, if the tournament is being held in substandard pitches, it's going to be less. So will you make it as a full associate tournament, or will you continue to bring big name players is the question. But overall, for a Canadian perspective, this is a good one, and I hope they can continue it in coming years as well.
Well, the final of the Global T20 is on the 11th of August, and we'll stay across that tournament and all other action for you here, of course, at the Wicket. The 100, the England and Wales Cricket Board's short-form tournament for men and women that spans the summer school holidays and is intended to introduce a new audience to the sport, is underway. We could do a whole podcast on it on its own, I think. There are 8 sides: the Oval Invincibles, who are the men's champions, Southern Brave, who are the title holders among the women's teams, plus Trent Rockets, Manchester Originals, Northern Superchargers, London Spirit, Welsh Fire, and Birmingham Phoenix. And the event wraps up with a double-header final at Lord's on August the 18th. John, this is the 4th season of the competition that's been praised and pilloried in seemingly equal measure in the UK. What have you made of the first week or so of action?
Well, to be honest, my attention's been on the test matches. I think it's too early to see any patterns, although the Oval Invincibles seem keen to show that is exactly what they are. And it's also striking, I think, to see how many of England's fringe or discarded or retired players are performing. Two Currans, Will Jacks, for example. Whilst I was very pleased to see Jake Bull claiming 3 for 24 for the Welsh Fire.
John, this is, though, a very significant summer for the competition, it seems, as the ECB are casting around for outside investors to come in, with the board set to go to market in September. That's significant because it'll relieve the ECB of some of the financial burden of supporting them, bring in revenue, and from the ECB perspective, help the tournament grow. There have been some big names rumoured to be assessing whether to invest, and that includes the Glazer family, the majority shareholder in Manchester United Football Club, who of course also own the Desert Vipers in the UAE, Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, the acting duo who own Wrexham Football Club, and even the owners of Newcastle United Football Club, with a new Durham-based side mooted for the future. They've been linked with a possible buy-in. What's your assessment of this particular subplot?
It has the appearance of a confused and confusing mess. We know that discussions have been held with some of the IPO owners. It should be no surprise that the level of equity and control on offer is not enough for them. I guess we're now entering into horse trading mode. ECB's CEO has said that English cricket is not for sale. The ECB thinks that its 51% equity is worth over £400 million. Some of the 8 hosting counties want to keep their 49%, others only want to sell part. So the sellers want to keep an element of control. I think the buyers will find that hard to countenance, especially as they're not sure what they'll be getting for their investment. And add in to the mix rumours that, after all, it may revert to T20 format, but only with the next broadcast rights deal, which is due to kick in 2028, and yet it will still be called the 100. No wonder there is confusion.
Subas, the importance of that outside investment is that it could encourage players perhaps to choose the 100 over other tournaments. Now there's Major League Cricket, the global T20 in Canada, and also a T10 tournament in the Bahamas. That's coming up soon, plus a T10 tournament in Zimbabwe. That's all before the end of September. It really is crucial that the tournament appeals to players and the ECB gets this right, isn't it?
Well, it's not about the quality of tournament, also about the money now. And 100 will be behind the pecking order for my liking because of the financial incentives in offer. I think the quality players will get better opportunities financially in these smaller leagues because they need to have someone to show the face. And we saw likes of Maxwell, one of the best in format playing trade in US with Cummins. Teams in the 100 should fork out more money if they want to get these players. And one upside is that if they perform, there's opportunity to continue playing in the T20 Blast as well. But there are a lot of tournaments around that they can just go and play in safe rather than stay for a whole season.
Well, John, already we've seen some players come in and out for very brief stays, most notably Mohamed Amir at the Oval Invincibles and Chris Green at the Trent Rockets as they fill in for players who were finishing up in the USA. Meanwhile, a host of England Test stars have been absent as the series against the West Indies has been wrapping up. We're back to where we were in January and February, aren't we? I remember we had this discussion then with players joining and leaving teams when the franchise competitions really were in full effect then, and the fans, of course, having trouble keeping up with who's playing for who and where they are. It's deja vu, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and it's very much a case of guns for hire, which Subas was alluding to. I suspect that the situation is going to get worse before it ever gets better. I wonder if anybody's actually asked the paying public what they think about it all, the comings and goings. I think the answer's, I doubt it. Because if the paying public don't care, does it matter?
Well, that's the $64 million question, isn't it? And I wonder if we'll ever have an answer to it. Well, what we can say is we'll be across everything that's happening here in the 100 and report back throughout its course for you at the Wicket. Gentlemen, as we always do, let's hear from you about something that's caught your attention this week in the world of cricket as a wrap-up. John, first of all.
Well, 3 quick things. 1, Gary Sobers is 88 this week. Joe Root is now 7th in the list of Test match run scorers with 12,027 runs, passing Brian Lara, Sangakkara and Alistair Cook lying immediately ahead on 12,400 and 12,427 respectively. Hopefully he can get close to Tendulkar's record unless he gets pensioned off like James Anderson. And the third thing is that the debuts have come for sons of Andrew Flintoff and Michael Vaughan.
Yes, it's lovely to see the next generation coming through and and also the fact that they're the sons of former England men's captains. That makes the glow even rosier, I guess. Subas, what's tickled your attention?
Well, the League Two is underway now. Scotland had better series with 3 wins and a was out at home turf, and even more so with debutants Charlie Castle and Michael English having their dream debuts. Having to see a debutant getting 7 for is something that's unheard of for sure.
Yeah, that was a remarkable performance and a great effort from Scotland, who, of course, were champions at this level the last time this tournament was played, and they're flexing their muscles again. It would appear a very convincing series win for them against Oman in Dundee. Well, that's all from this episode of The Wicket. We'll be back soon with more cricket chat from the Gulf region, Asia and worldwide. As ever, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on what you've heard wherever you get your podcast. For our next episode, we'll be hearing from a high-profile international cricketer. Keep an ear out for that in your podcast feeds, as it'll be well worth your time. But for now, this is Brian Murgatroyd along with Jon Pike and Subas Humagain from us all. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.